Welcome to the Women at the Top podcast interview series. My name is Regina Barr, and I'm the founder of the Women at the Top Network, and I will be your host today. For those of you who don't know us, Women at the Top is a community of like-minded women who share the what, vision, and mission. And our goal, simply put, is to empower aspiring women to lead. And we do this in a couple of ways, by providing information, training, and connections. I'm so excited that joining me today is networking expert and author, Teresa Thomas. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Teresa. Teresa has led WIN, Women in Networking, since 2007. And she's the author of 2 books, Win-Win Networking, Your Guide for Confident and Effective Connections, and 50 Fun Things, Enjoy the Small Things. Through the Win-Win Connects umbrella brand, she catalyzes meaningful connections for people, possibilities, and purpose. With 25 years experience as a connector, Teresa has helped thousands to connect and grow through her programs, presentations, and her books. So on that note, welcome to our call today, Teresa.
Thank you so much, Regina. It's great to be back.
It is so fun to have you back. And actually, I didn't pull it off my shelf, but I do have 50 Fun Things sitting on my shelf, and I have it like facing out so I can see the cover. And so just like a quick, interesting side note is my husband and I didn't really get to do any like big trips. It was mostly cabin stuff, and just with a lot of things that we had going on in projects, and then some things with my mom. And so he was saying to me last night, like, we need an adventure, or we need to get something scheduled. And I was thinking to myself, I should pull out the 50 Fun Things book and kind of go through that with him and see if we can find something. If we can't do something huge, maybe we could find some other things that we could do. So I just thought I would share that with you because I do keep it out. And I do some things for myself to remind me to maybe not always take things so seriously. Like a lot of times I wear a fun little ring. So today I have on a mood ring, and it was given to me by a friend, I think, in 2008, and I still wear it. So I have a lot of different little things like that, because otherwise you could ask Chris, my executive assistant. I do tend to get a little serious sometimes. So
I'm glad you're pulling out those reminders to let yourself lighten up for some things, and how special to wear a ring that reminds you of a friend that brings you joy.
Yes, absolutely. So with that, let's talk a little bit about some of your books. And you wrote Win-Win Networking, your guidebook for confident and effective connections. I don't even know when. I know it was a while ago. And obviously, you and I have chatted before, and we've known each other for a while. So you've been a friend of this podcast. So what is a piece of advice from that book that may have changed since you wrote the book? And what has stayed the same?
Sure. Do you have a preference whether I start with what stayed the same or what's changed?
Okay. Your choice.
All right. So I will start out with what has stayed the same. And the advice to set an intention for your networking, that has not changed. Maybe the ways you network have changed, but when you set an intention for what you want to experience in your networking, it could be with different groups or events or opportunities. When you set that intention, it makes everything else come into alignment. It determines which opportunities you say yes to, the invitations, the type of networking you do. It influences how you introduce yourself, how you want to be remembered, so that you're not scrambling and trying to figure that out on the spot. So if you set intention, everything else around networking starts to fall into place.
So I want to pick up on that before you jump. So give us an example of setting intention.
Sure. So, first of all, I'll say that some people's intention will be always the same for networking, but most people, their intention for networking will change over time, or depending on what they're working on, an upcoming project or event, for example. Regina, I know that you host networking events. And so when you're doing that, I'm imagining when you're out networking, you're telling people like, oh, I would love it if you came to my next networking event. So So most of us, our networking goals change over time depending on what we most need at that moment, and that is the best fit for the people that we're networking with. Other people, their networking goals or the intention they set may not change. So if you have a really straightforward type of role and your goals are always, very similar, then you might just want to always remind yourself that your goal, say you are selling home insurance or business insurance, then that's probably how you will always introduce yourself, and you might mix it up. But you're always wanting to make those connections that will be a good fit for you as you're selling business insurance or a plumber. People like with those roles, their intentions tend to stay pretty similar. But it's easy. You don't have to make a huge deal out of it. So when I set intention, I first do it when I decide what I say yes to or no to. And in my book, I have a chart that helps, a filter that helps people think through what they say yes to and no to that aligns with their goals. And then when I know what I want to go to for networking, then on the drive there, I remind myself, like, who is the audience? What is my intention? How do I want to be remembered? And then, of course, how I will follow up and have all those in alignment. So that part is just can simply happen on the drive over, or now more and more of our networking is online. So it can just be getting myself in that headspace. I put in my calendar 20 minutes before on my calendar just to remind myself, like, okay, be ready. This is what why you're participating in this particular event. So does that help?
Yes, that does. So that's kind of stays same. And you started to allude to some ways that things have changed by saying that sometimes we're doing our networking online. So talk a little bit about what's changed.
Yeah, well, personally, my own attitudes have changed. I used to think that in-person networking was the best way to network. And with us needing to go online the past few years, I would find a lot of value in networking online through LinkedIn. That world has proven to be more and more valuable. And what's exciting to me too is I had, prior to the pandemic, set an intention that I wanted to have more global connections of people that really valued, authentic connection and joy and life fulfillment. And once we went online, then I was able to make those connections and fulfill that intention. So online, I now see that as incredibly valuable. And I've learned a lot more about online networking now because I see that it's not something that's just like on the side or extra, especially with LinkedIn. There's so many ways you can leverage LinkedIn. And I know that you do that, Regina, yourself. You're really great at using LinkedIn. It can be through LinkedIn events or having a LinkedIn group or being posting or commenting regularly. I'm just realizing that's a powerful tool. And then there's a fun thing that's changed that I would love to share. And that is, that's changed in the book is, in the book, I have a section about business cards, business card etiquette, and, making sure you always have your business cards on you. Well, that has drastically changed as well. So a lot of people, having a paper traditional business card is a great thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But more and more of us are now going to a digital business card, which I love because you can put your link to your LinkedIn, you can put your website, you can put so much in there, and you can always be updating it and keeping it relevant. So before the pandemic, I had ordered a bunch of business cards that didn't get used for a long time, and things changed. And the website I had on there I was no longer using that. And so with this, the app I use it's free, it's easy. It's actually even been a conversation starter with people. So when we exchange business cards and I have my digital one, at this point, because it's fairly new for most people, is even drive some excitement. So that part was when I wrote the book. I don't.
Big
I mean,
difference.
digital business cards are probably in the infancy.
Yes. A big change that I've seen too is I remember when using a barcode or those little squares was like bleeding edge and nobody really got onto it. And now all of a sudden, everywhere I go, everybody's using, is it called a barcode? It is a barcode, right?
Um,
What's that little square?
no,
You
it's
know what I,
yeah. I know what you're talking about, and of course, I just forgot what
yeah,
it's
if it comes
called.
to you, I know everybody who's listening or watching, they know exactly what I'm talking about because it's on PowerPoints and we'll all get out our phone and we're scrolling in to get it and click on it. It's on, some people have it on their business card or if you're getting an offer, so I'm seeing them everywhere. So
Yeah,
what's
this
old again
thing.
is new again. Yes.
So that's my
Yes.
digital business card, and then this is what it looks like for anybody who's not familiar. Like you could put all that. So yes, whatever
Yeah.
that thing is called that we can't remember.
Which we'll remember after the program
Exactly.
today or whatever. So more on that later. So let's go back to talking a little about in-person networking events. And I have to tell you, it's taken a while here in Minnesota for us to get really back into the swing of thing with in-person networking. But I have to tell you, I've seen it picking up and I've seen a lot of energy in the networking events that I've been a part of. So what are you hearing from people now that we are doing more of that connecting it in person? And what advice do you have as we network together now?
Right. I am hearing a general excitement for people to get back to in-person networking. Um, but I'm also hearing from people that they're feeling rusty and a little apprehensive about coming back into something they haven't done for a long time. But the main thing that I'm hearing from everyone comes back to intention. And because we were in a period of isolation for so long and really had to look at everything in life differently, um, and even thinking about the quality of our connections and how we live our lives and all that, people have become way more intentional about who and how they network. So a lot of people have broken habits that they used to do, like they're realizing like, oh, I didn't really enjoy that or get results from that, or oh, this is the type of people that I want to meet, and maybe there's a different way to do that. So that's a major thing that I'm hearing, and a lot of people are saying that if they can't find the type of networking that works for them, some of them are just like, well, I'll start it myself. So,
Yes.
so yes, I've started training others to use the networking tools that I've developed over the years, and that's really exciting. But it all does come down to intention. What gets you results? What feels fulfilling and authentic to who you are? What your goals are? I think we've really, for the most part, changed the thinking that networking happens in a certain way. Uh, we're trying all different kinds of new things now. A lot of people are doing like service work activities together, or fun outings, or getting to know experts or in different ways than just the talking head at a session that they used to go to. Like people are trying new things and seeing what works for them and helps them to make the connections feel valuable.
That's a great segue because when Women in Networking was founded in 2002, and you've been leading WIN since 2007. So you've got a little time under your belt there. And we just talked a lot about, what has changed. And so I'm curious to see, what do you envision as we continue to move forward in the ways that we network? You were just talking about some of the experiential things or some philanthropic things, which I have to tell you, I always love doing that. If I can get a group of women together, I've done like a Ronald McDonald House cooking event. I've done packing school supplies with a group of women for backpack to school type of things. And I love the opportunity to do good while I'm also connecting and meeting new people and nurturing relationships. So what else do you see on the horizon?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say you just reminded me of something I used to do that I totally forgot about. And it's like the service projects or anything where we know that, for example, if you're wanting to have a serious conversation, say you have a teenager in the car when you're not looking at each other, is when that stuff comes up. And years ago, I would facilitate networking where people were making meals at the same time. And then I would go around and say, oh, you got to meet that person and that person. And it took away the pressure and it was highly efficient. So the reason I'm sharing that example is even though that I was doing that a long time ago, we're trying new things and just like, okay, maybe we do this time or we do this another time. And I got so excited about thinking about that what was the original question you were
What do
asking?
you see down the pike coming?
Oh, down the pipe? Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, it is tied to that. And that is that people are, again, being more selective and trying new things and signing up for things that aren't necessarily predictable, like the old way. Like I think you know Sarah Sladek. She's a
Yes.
membership expert. She's probably been a guest. Well, she'll talk about the old ways of being in an organization or networking was you made a commitment to probably one main group and maybe a couple others, and you had a commitment and you were always going to be there and you had a role. People now are more in the experience mode. Like what do I want to experience with what types of people that will fulfill what I need for networking? And that doesn't necessarily always happen with a group. So people will try out different events and opportunities versus less than people are joining membership organizations less, but wanting to experience different groups and events more. Does that make sense?
Yes. And actually, it's interesting that you say that because I'm very involved in my local chamber. And we have, like everyone else, some downturn in membership. But what's interesting is we tried some old things again, like we re-implemented doing our trade show. But what we did was we made sure to have some very experiential things at the trade show so that they could do something fun while they were also networking. So an example is we have an axe throwing company that's a member, and of course they can't bring real axes, right? But I happened to be in Costco and saw a Velcro axe set, and so I happened to see him. I'm like, oh, you got to come, you have to do something. I was like, I saw this thing in Costco, you should do that and get people engaged and talking about your company. He goes, oh, well, we already have that. And I was like, you got to be at our trade show. And he came, and so that was one of our experiential interactive things. And this is a little old school, but we still need headshots if we're doing more LinkedIn networking and doing more things in that space. And a lot of people don't have good headshots. And, some of our photographers went out of business. So I did have a photographer doing headshots on site and we made it really fun. And it was a bigger success than we expected. Like we ran out of time. We had 90 minutes and we couldn't finish everyone before we had to put them into or get them to go into the banker room. So even taking an old school type of event and building an experiential can go a long way too. So it was a lot of fun for me too. I have to be honest, even though I was kind of working behind the scenes too.
Absolutely. And what you described was you elevated the level of connection that the participants had with the exhibitors and also with each other. Because going back to what we were originally talking about, lightening up, when we lighten up, we connect more easily with each other. When we can see an example of what somebody does and experience it ourselves versus just being told it or handed a brochure, we're more invested, like, oh, now I get why I would want to take a group to do axe throwing. But if somebody just told me, like, well, why would I want to throw an axe?
Right.
You're really taking it to another level. And for your exhibitors, it's great for them to demonstrate and give a taste of what they do. And I will also say, and you're probably already doing this, but like with trade shows, I hear over and over again from exhibitors that some of the best networking happens with the other exhibitors. So building that in so that the exhibitors have a chance to somehow,
Connect.
to know each other, connect is great. So we're looking at things in a more complex yet fun way of making connections happen more quickly and more authentically at the same time.
So you were just talking a little bit about finding a group to connect with, right? And how people are moving around more. So let's just say you've explored some groups and you've found a right group that maybe you want to build some relationships with and spend more time with. How do you advise we make the most out of networking with a particular group?
With a particular group? So yes, if you have decided, you know what, I really love being part of this particular group, caveat, first of all, I'm going to say, check out a group more than once before you decide to join, just to make sure it's a fit. But once you know, like, yes, this is the group for me, there are a few things that you can do to make sure that it is really valuable for your networking. The first one that I always suggest is to have a role. And now roles within an organization are limited. Of course, some organizations may have a board or, a task force, but there are other roles like checking people in at the event or helping to make sure that things are running smoothly or calling and checking in on, members between. So find something that works for you and fits. And it makes it way easier for you to meet the other people that are really involved. And it makes it, when you have a role, well, it does so many things. It gets you more connected with everybody. It makes it so that it's easier for people to remember you when you have a role. And it also increases your confidence when you have a role. And it gives you an amazing entry and exit strategy. Because when you have a role, it builds that confidence of like, oh, well, part of what I'm doing today is making everyone feel welcomed or informed or accommodated. And then just having that builds your confidence. And well, if you don't have an official role, my secret little technique that I do for myself is there is a part of me that's shy, and a lot of people. So like, if we think about ourselves, like, oh, how am I coming across? What am I saying? Do they like me? Are they interested? Then our confidence lowers. So I designate myself when I go to any networking events as a goodwill ambassador. And I don't have to tell anybody that that's my role. That's like my own, I just tell myself that I'm a goodwill ambassador, because I know that when I have that perspective versus, okay, who am I going to meet and how's this going to work? Then I'm still able to introduce myself how I want to be known, but it makes me like feel it's easier then for me to say, oh, have you met so-and-so yet? Could I introduce you? It gets me to outside of my little head of worrying and thinking about how I'm connecting and thinking bigger picture about not just one-on-one connections, but how I can introduce people to each other and still be authentic to who I am in my introductions.
Yeah, I love that. My chamber has an ambassadors group. So if people are not sure how they want to get involved, I always encourage them to check out that group, because it's an easy way. It's a large group and we meet and you get to meet the people in the group. So you're already building those relationships. And then you get to go out and meet new members and existing members. And it's just kind of a fun thing. And it's a fairly low commitment. So love the Goodwill Ambassador. Something that I think we could all benefit by just patting ourselves on the back and saying, okay, your job is to be a Goodwill Ambassador. So love that.
Oh, good.
So I want to talk a little bit about 50 joyful conversation starters, which you created that list before the pandemic. And you've talked about in the past using them as icebreakers at events and presentations. And that's really fun. And really, if you think about it, just today, when I mentioned the book, that was a conversation starter for us, you know,
Right.
that I have the book there and how it came up in conversation and how I want to use it with my husband. So, can you give us an example of an easy icebreaker anyone can use?
Yeah. Well, this one may or may not be connected to joy depending on how you ask it, but the one of the easiest icebreakers that you can use that gets the base, like a really nice solid base, is what do you most hope for from this event or this experience? Because then you get a sense of why they're there, which you can immediately then connect. Oh, well, the reason I'm here is because I'm excited about this, or I want to learn this, or I want to meet people like this. Like it just sets the stage. Like, what do you most hope for from this event? The other thing, like, versus just like, who are you, and what is your business? Like, it doesn't have to be dry, and it brings it to a conversational level. Other things that I like to ask people is, what do you most love about what you do? And that lights them up, and it creates an instant connection, and it opens the door for me to share, well, what lights me up about what I do, or what are your favorite types of people to work with? It takes it away from that dry, well, anybody who lives in the West Metro that is going to be buying a home, and then it changes to like, oh, you know what? I really love it. Like first time home buyers, and especially, like they have a dog or whatever, like adding those little flares, it just makes you care more about what that person does. And it makes them more memorable than just the dry, I sell homes in the West Metro.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It helps, even just seeing you talking through that, it helps you to lighten up and light up, right?
Yes.
And I think then people, it engages their brain in a different way and gets them thinking differently too. So, it's like that left brain, right brain type of thing. And like, even when you were just saying, oh, what do you do? It just felt like the energy
Yes.
totally went down. And it's not that we don't want to know what people do, but how much more fun is it to learn about what somebody loves about what they do? So
Yes.
I
And
really like that.
that little shift makes a big difference. Like, I was talking to somebody who is English is not her first language, and she said she learned right away that she would go to events and say, "Why are you here?" You can imagine the energy was just,
Yes.
and then she's like, "Oh." So then she switched it to like, "Oh, what brought you here?" Which is a
Yes.
totally different energy of just
Yes.
shifting that.
Yes. And yes, a simple word change for her, right?
Yeah.
But she was on the right track with what she
Oh
was
yeah.
asking. It's just sometimes how it's perceived. So good for her for figuring that out.
Yes.
Now, we started to talk about this concept of joy, and I know that your work is very much about fostering connection and joy. And I think most of us, quite honestly, could use a little more joy in our life. So tell us a little bit about, what does joy play in networking?
Well, there's so much I can say about joy, but when I associate with networking, we touched upon it a little bit, where joy is a connector and it is a bridge builder. And when we feel joy, we feel more hopeful, excited, curious, wanting to meet other people, wanting to share what we want to share in our networking. Joy is a bridge builder. So I've seen that there may be people that on paper, if they just saw, something, they would be like, oh, we have nothing in common. But when people start talking about what lights them up, or what they enjoy about their work, or what their favorite types of clients are, or what brings them joy, that brings us together as humans. And we care about each other and each other's success more when we see each other as human beings, unique, interesting. We don't have to agree on everything. I've had people share that with me, that like, say they did 50 Fun Things as a team building event. They would say, oh, they wouldn't name names, but they would say there were certain people that I just never really got. And I just, but now that I see what they enjoy, like I feel more connected to them. I feel more like we're part of a team. And so it might seem really kind of like woo-woo out there, but I've just learned that joy is a really critical piece of, how we live our lives, how we pursue our careers, our businesses, because ultimately, for all we know, we have one life. And so make those choices that bring you joy. And when I say joy, it doesn't mean like doesn't have to be huge, big things. It's like you said, like the little things that you notice, like an authentic, specific compliment to a colleague of something you appreciate. Just those little things make a huge, huge difference. And so, yes, there's lots I could say about that, but I get on a soapbox with this.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you something. I totally agree. Life is short. I've lost 2 siblings, and they were very young. And I always tell people when they ask me, should I do this or this? Life is short. So do something that's going to bring you joy and that allows you to treasure or value your important relationships. A lot of times it's like a woman was like, oh my gosh, I have this going on and my daughter's in Amsterdam and she's over there on work study and I don't know if I should go. I'm like, really? I'm like, will that be here when you get back?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Then go on the trip and then know that you're going to work a little harder before you leave and you're probably going to work a little harder after you get back, but you'll never have that opportunity to do that particular trip while your daughter is doing a work study abroad again. So take advantage of that opportunity. So, yeah, all about that. And, when you talked about filters, when you're choosing networking events, how great to choose a networking event based on, will this bring me joy or won't it bring me joy? Right.
Right.
Because I think like I said earlier, we could all use more joy in our lives, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. And when I wrote the Win-Win Networking, I hadn't come to the point in my life where I realized how critical joy is for our well-being. So I didn't include it in the filter at that time. But what I did include that's similar is, will this energize or deplete me? And so that's really similar. And for some people, it doesn't matter so much. So what I do is on the filter chart is you identify which questions are most important to you. And then that helps to guide what you say yes to. And so for me, it's very, very important. I'm a highly sensitive person. I need to choose events and experiences that fuel me and not deplete me, because then I'm no good to anybody. And I'm much less likely to do the things that I'm supposed to be doing with networking, right? Like following up. Well, when you're drained, it's a hard thing to do. But when you're excited for the connections you made, it shifts that. And then you're motivated and you're more likely to take those next steps.
Absolutely. So I recently hosted my semi-annual networking social event for executive women. And I'm just wondering, what would be one piece of advice that you can offer so that when the women or men who might be listening in or watching us today do choose to do networking so that they can make the most of any networking event that they attend?
Okay, I'll give a little checklist. So first of all, we talked about set your intentions. So they're going to sign up for your event and they're like, okay, this is what I'm most hoping for from this event. And this is how I want people to know me. So this is how I will introduce myself. So that's the first part. Then, well, once they've registered, for your event, then they, for your future events, they put on their calendar a designated time to follow up. Preferably the same day or within 24 hours while they're still fresh and remembering the highlights of what they experienced. And that can be kept really simple through LinkedIn. That's a really easy first step. So just send a simple, great to meet you at X event, and something specific about the connection. Like, I really appreciate what you said about this, or oh, I thought of a great resource that I think you'd be interested in, something specific, and then I'd like to stay connected on LinkedIn. That's an easy first step. And but the main thing is to do that follow-up. You don't have to follow up with every single person, but the people that you resonated with, that fit especially well with why you're networking, definitely follow up with them. Otherwise, they become just a distant memory, and oh, that was interesting. And it's okay if you don't follow up right away, but you will feel better and you'll have better results and you'll be more memorable and effective in taking that conversation to the next level if you follow up sooner than later.
That's great advice. So I do appreciate all that you're sharing with us today. That does, however, conclude our interview with Teresa Thomas. And just a reminder, you can learn more about Teresa at www.teresa-thomas.com. And that's Teresa, TERESA-Thomas.com. So thank you so much for being here today, Teresa. It was really a pleasure to have you back. And for those of you still listening in, don't forget to visit reginabarr.com, where you can learn more about our upcoming podcasts and other events on the event page. So with all of that, thank you all for joining us today, and have a great day.